So it's pretty early in the morning here, and I'm going to make some eggs. And while I'm making some eggs, I want to discuss a little bit about resumes. Everyone has heard resumes. There's all these tips and tricks on the internet, all of these big philosophical questions, right? Should it be written long? Should it be written short? Should you have periods at the end of your sentences? Should you have education before experience or experience before education? Quite a bit of questions, quite a bit of um, uh, opinions, right? And there isn't one that's perfect. And you talk to some people and they say, oh, this is the best way to write one. So I would like to give you my experience. And my experience, of course, isn't necessarily maybe the right one for you, but I would like to give the reasons behind why I think one avenue of approach is maybe more relevant or more effective than than another avenue of approach. And that's important because then you can make your own decision. You can say, well, I never thought of it that way, but I don't want it on my resume, or hey, that's a good idea. Let me go ahead and do that. So before I kind of get into the details of how I try and structure my resume, you want to be careful with your resume, okay? I've interviewed a lot of individuals who have just lied, they've lied about their experiences. They really misled their employers to believe that they either have experience or that they've done something, and it's clear once you meet with them that they never have. So always remember, keep your resume accurate. It doesn't mean that you have to be kind of berate yourself and be so to the bone that it doesn't look like you have any experience. But take a moment and go through it and make sure that it's accurate, right? Not just in terms of the facts of your school, of your work employment, of the location and the years and the months that you've worked there, but make sure that it's actually accurate, because it may come back to bite you. It is possible to have someone review a resume, you speak with them, and all of a sudden they're going to compare you with your resume and say, man, there's a huge mismatch here. And that would be the end of your consideration for that position. Literally the end. You just ruined it. And you may be a good candidate, but if your employer or your future employer feels like you're misleading, right on the spot, they're going to just deny it. So that's kind of rule number one of resumes. And of course, what's the purpose of the resume, right? Why are we filling out this piece of paper, emailing it out to all of these companies and job opportunities in order for us to get employed, right? Well, the purpose of it is to tell someone who knows nothing about you, what you know, and more importantly, what you know as specific to the job you're applying for, right? It's not a Facebook type of profile. It's not an Instagram profile. It's a work history, but you can also add in their talent or special skills you may have that maybe weren't attained through work. It's to give your employer an idea of how you are going to fit into the position you're going to apply for. So, giving that kind of highlight overview of what a resume is for, the first thing that you need on your resume at the very top. Now, I like to center this because I'm a little bit OCD, but you can do what you like. But the first thing that you want to do is when you know what? One thing before I talk about centering your information. It doesn't matter whether you use a Microsoft template for your resume or not. Please make sure that you don't have a bunch of lines and a bunch of formatting that get in the way of your resume. It should be very, very simple formatting. Center it or justify things to the left. Standard 12 to 14 size font. You bold, some of the things here and there, like, my education should be bolded, and your education underneath. My work history, that should be bolded, and everything else should not be bolded. If you have like more than 6 or 7 formattings for your font, you're wrong. If you have all these lines and all these design kind of elements, you're wrong. If you're literally applying for maybe a marketing or an artistic, that may be different. And for you, you're going to know that ahead of time. But for the majority of the people, you don't want flowers on your resume. You don't want 5 horizontal lines to separate one thing from the other. Keep it clean. Keep it simple. Sometimes you have individual bosses, and the people that are looking to hire you, they're going to be looking through that resume quickly. And I mean quick. When I was going through hiring for my employees, I probably spent more time than what my managers did for me and for the candidates for my current position, but I spent typically about 30, 40 seconds. If at the very beginning I could tell or it was very hard for me to read, it already gave me a bit insight into this individual. So make sure it's very simple. So if you're looking at your resume right now and you're seeing a bunch of formatting or it's not clear, that's 101. You got to get it fixed. All right, so kind of back to what I was saying, justifying your information. Make sure that your information is accurate. Put your name on the top, okay? So Santa Claus. Next, add your address. If you don't want to add your full address, that's perfectly fine. Just put your city and state, so that way they know where you're at. You don't need to put your street name if you're not comfortable with it. You don't need to put your house number. Perfectly okay. Not a problem. But at least put the city and state, so that way companies who are applying know where you're from. Again, most companies these days are easily diverse. There are many that are, right, organizations outside the U.S., even within stateside, sprawling all over the place. Satellite offices here in California and then in Michigan. So HR departments don't tend to reside necessarily where you are physically, locally employed. So that's why it's important for you to put that state, because many jobs have, potentially, 8 or 9 locations minimum, and they may need to know, hey, where's this guy even located at? So make that clear. Second thing that you need, so you've got your name, you've got the location, third things for those counting that you're going to need is your phone number. Yes, you need your phone number on your resume. You have to have a way for them to contact you. Now, you can also have your email, and I have both. Absolutely have both. But sometimes I know from talking to some individuals, they're not comfortable putting their phone number on. Okay? Now, I'm just going to tell you like it is. If you don't have your phone number on there, you're now making your employers work hard to get to know you. I'm sorry that you may not be comfortable with it. Use your house number if you have that available. You can also, through Google, you can add your phone number to Google if you have a Google account. And then what you can do is you can have them make a new phone number for free. And then you can tie your new Google phone number to the phone number of your cell phone. So that way, once you get the job, you can say, okay, I don't want this phone number associated with my real phone number, and you're done. If you're familiar with WhatsApp, then you already are a step of the game. This is just if you really want, if you're not comfortable having your real phone number on your resume. From my experience, I've been applying and working in the workforce for almost 18 years. I've never had spammers call from my resume. I just never have had that happen. And I really think that if you're desperate for a job, if you're really looking for a job, put your real phone number on there. So you should have your name. Underneath of that, you should have your location, and then underneath of that, you should have your phone number and email. Be sure this important information, this crucial information, is legible. No winding fonts. Standard fonts. Make sure it's legible. There's no point of applying for a job if they're having to use a magnifying glass to figure out what you wrote. Double check to make sure your email is accurate and your phone number is legible. Make sure you include, again, area code, right? So they need to, not everyone's going to be local to your area. So area code and then your 7-digit phone number. All right, now, after that, This is where kind of the philosophy changes a little bit depending on who you talk to. Some people like to have an objective, right? And you'll see that 95% of the time. What's the objective, right? Some people believe that it's not necessary to have an objective, and you jump straight into maybe your work history or your education. My point of view, you absolutely need to have an objective. If for no other reason than that most employers, just from a default sort of reasoning, expect to have an objective. And so what needs to be in the objective, right? You bold the word objective. Underneath of that, just write 2 or 3 sentences, right? If you have a lot of history in a specific department, perfect. You know, I am an avid weightlifter, and I've been training individuals for over 5 years, and I've successfully, on average, increased bulk mass for my fitness pals or my I would say employees by 30%. You know, something along those lines. What is your history of the job, and what is your experience? Something that you can give them. So for something like me, I talk about quickly. I mentioned how long I've been in that industry and what I've done in that industry in order to be successful, or what is something about me that I feel could contribute to their business, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to apply for Starbucks. You want to be a barista. You've never worked for Starbucks before, okay? But let's say you worked at a different company. Let's say Dunkin' Donuts. So you might want to mention, I've been working, in addition to loving coffee and its creations, I've worked at Dunkin' Donuts for 1.5 years, and I've absolutely loved my job, and I know how to make over 17 different varieties, along with satisfying and customers, right? Because it's a customer-centric job, so you might want to mention, how your experience interacting with customers, and if you have POS. If you're familiar with it, right, operating the point of sale unit, the register, you could quickly mention that. So in addition to being a barista at Dunkin' Donuts, I've also managed the register and have excellent reviews from my customers and my manager. Something like that. You just need an objective that quickly says a little bit about you and concentrates really at the fundamental level of why you'd be good at this position. And that typically kind of rises from a factual standpoint, right? X amount of years, or this is my passion. If you want to go that route, you can, especially if you're lacking experience. You can say, my passion has always been sharpening knives. Ever since I was a child, 15 years in the making, I have been sharpening knives. I've done it for schoolmates, I've done it for my job, and I've done it for fun. I am an expert in it. Something like that would be amazing. If you have maybe limited experience, but you believe you are an expert in something, or you have true passion for something, you can let that show in the objective. That's amazing. Make sure you don't have 5 sentences and then you try and show your passion at the end. You want your objective to be very slim. You want it to be like a straw, right? You know exactly what a straw is. There's nothing fancy around it that you go, what shape is it in? You know, it's got to be thin, clear, and straight to the point. So if you want to show that you have passion in something, and that might be because you lack experience, right? Maybe you're new in the job market, fine. Show that passion. Prove to them that in very quick and succinct way that passion has manifested itself in you working with the tools of the trade without actually being employed. You helping out other people and using that passion. My passion at the very beginning was fixing things. So on my resume, I had, fixed over, 650 digital devices in my first year of school, right? That included phones, computers, laptops, PDAs, watches. Show your passion through. The first job that I got at a university, I didn't even get it because I was qualified. True story. I got it because I was bored and I designed a web page for them just because I was literally bored one day. I had no school, and they told me later on the only reason they hired me is because I showed a willingness to get something done and to experiment, and they had never encountered that before. Simple as that. Show a little bit of passion if you're lacking experience, right? So you've got your contact information, you've got your objective. Now schools of thought kind of come abound. What is it that you want to show next? Some say show your education. Some say don't worry about your education right now. That should be at the end. You should show your experience. Okay? Other people say don't do either. Talk about your skill set. I'll tell you exactly what I have done, and I believe it's very successful. Again, you can take the path you want. You can choose what modules you want to add on your resume. I'm just going to give you my ideas of why I think something should or should not be added, and then you can judge for yourself. Oh, that coffee's good. All right, so here's schools of thought in order. From what I do is I have first skills. So I kind of center align basically a paragraph, although it's not in paragraph, it's in bullet points. And I call it, I think I call it something like work experience and skills. I'm sorry, not work experience, just skills, or skill set for this job. And you can even call it accomplishments if it's a mixture of two, right? Skills and accomplishments. This works very well if you have a good history of having a job and at least holding it for over a year. Because what you want to do then is, let's say you're applying to be a painter for homes. Right off the bat, something you want to you write. This is an opportunity for your employer to, for the first time, really get to know you. The objective is good, but it's not really about getting to know you and how you're going to fit in this job. Your experience may be good, and that's important to justify, but if you really want to hit the hammer on the head, and I really feel this is effective, you need to put, skills and accomplishments right underneath your objective, right? And what you need to do is you need to write out very succinct and clear message what your skills are. So you're going to be, let's say you're applying for a painter. First line, can identify and understand the difference between latex, primer, clear coat, double coat, triple coat, and its applications and use. Perfect. Think about that. That person, right off the tap, just told you what they knew about it. Second paragraph, have directed painting projects for homes, House of Humanity, and large-scale manufactured buildings. Perfect. Now that shows that they have experience with projects, not just something small. And it seems like they've had some leadership attributed to that. Third paragraph might be something along the lines of heavy experience in exterior and interior paints, along with hazmat knowledge and caustic chemical waste and appropriate local laws repository. So that shows that they have experience in how to handle the waste and how to be responsible and legally and ethically in charge of waste. Those are the kind of things you want to have in your skill set. You need to make your skill set succinct, small, no more than 4 bullet points that stretch from the left to the right hand side. So where do you start with that? If you were going to say, hey, you know what, I do have some experience, where do you start with that? First things first, read the job description you're applying for. I know that sounds like, well, no duh, but think about it. Read the job description you're applying for. That's going to be your helper. That's going to be your gateway to how you and what you put on there. Why? Because what you're going to do if you do this right is you're going to look at the job description and you're basically going to copy the major responsibilities from that job description in your skill set if they're legit. That's really what you want to do. And that's so successful, I can't tell you. So you're going to look at your job resume and they're going to say, they might say something like, Experience with manufacturing paint indoors and outdoors. So you might take that, right? Now I would suggest you rewrite that in your own language, so that way they don't say, hey, you just copy and pasted everything. You definitely don't want that, because then it questions your integrity. So if something like that, then you rewrite it. Right? Heavy experience in painting exterior and interior buildings, along with global manufacturing sites. Well, as soon as they read that, they're going to say, hey, that's exactly what we're looking for. Now, how do they know that's exactly what you're looking for? Because you read it from the very job description they wrote, right? So if you have the experience, highlighted, you should have that in the skill set. Again, no more than 4 bullet points. Keep it clear. Don't put periods at the end. Just write it out a sentence, but no period. It's okay, and be clear. Be honest, but be clear. If you have experience that maybe is not on there, but you feel it'd be a fit job, fantastic, right? Add that on there. This is your first opportunity. It's really your first interview without having an interview, because it gives an edge now, because now you're reading about someone's not just experience, but a little bit of personality, a little bit of what do they think is important. So use that knowledge that they've given you about the job and say, what's the core responsibilities of this job, and how do I re-echo that on my resume if I've done that? And if you haven't done it, is there anything similar? Maybe you've never painted exterior buildings before. Okay, that's okay. But if you have experience painting outdoor furniture, that might be something you can add to it if you think it justifies it. So their job requirements are literally there, and they're kind of a cheat sheet for what you should have for your skills and accomplishments. Now, of course, we said skills, but we also mean accomplishments. So let's say you've won a painting award. That should be there, absolutely. Let's say you've submitted, like I did last year, 27 patents, and 5 of them were awarded. Well, depends on what I'm applying for, right? If it's an engineering or electrical engineering job, absolutely that should be on there. Absolutely. If I'm applying for a project management role and it's in a non-engineering department, then you have to ask yourself whether it's really beneficial to add that, because you don't want to add something that makes it go, wait, is this person applying to be an engineer? Is he even applying for the right job? I've had that question before, guys and gals. I've had that question where I didn't focus on the job, I didn't look at the description, I put what I thought was appropriate without really investing time and saying, this resume really should be focused on this job. And I have people calling back and say, they said, did you know you applied for an IT management role? Because there's a lot of technical stuff on here, and it looks like you applied for an engineering job. Oh shit, I should have known better. Stay focused. If it's something that you think is you got a certification in something, that should be jotted down. Again, make it a sentence form, not a list. Keep it succinct, no more than 4 bullet points. Don't make it into a story, or people are just gonna get fatigued reading it. Because after that, they're shortly gonna want to get into your experience. So, segueing into that, if you don't have a lot of experience, my recommendation is you put your education first. An associate's degree in blah, 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 or a bachelor's degree in blah, blah, blah. If you have neither, if you have maybe some certifications, put the certifications down. Education, certified in indoor and outdoor painting, certified in hazmat. Don't worry so much if you have no education, but as long as you have a certification. Don't say, well, everyone has it, or it's not that big of a deal. Do not berate yourself. Never talk yourself out of something. You let other people do that for you, but don't ever do that yourself. So if you have a certification, especially if you have no formal education as like an associate's or bachelor's, even if you have none in high school, that's okay. But if you got even a certification, put it on there, because you want to show your employer that you're at least able to go out there and get some formal training done. So what goes first, or what goes after the skills and accomplishments? If you want to add that module, do you want to add education, or do you want to add your work employment? So the decision for that from me was pretty easy. When I first started out, I had no experience. So I put my education first, because if I'm applying in the field that I just studied for, that's really the only thing I can do at that point. And then after that, I added experience, but it was all things that I've done around the house or things that I've done, but it wasn't any formal job. Or the job that I had only lasted for 6 months. So education's first, because in my mind, when I'm doing a resume, right, I want to justify that I know what I'm doing, that I'm qualified. If you don't have a lot of experience, how are you going to show that you're really qualified? So, no problem. You add your education. If you've completed it, you put an end date. You say, graduated in blah, blah, blah. If you have not completed it, then you put the month and the year that you started, dash, and then you can put expected graduation in June of 2020, as an example. Don't worry about the days. Throughout this entire application, when you're putting your work history, don't put 1st of June to the 12th of May of last year. No, no, no. Month and year are just fine. No one cares about the day. Literally, it's not important whatsoever. So that is what I would decide. If you don't have a lot of experience, you put your education first, because that gives them something to grasp on. Say, is this person qualified? Yeah, okay, they got good education in this, and okay, they don't have as much experience, because you want to see what they see first. If, on the other hand, you have a lot of experience, then you might consider putting your education last. I was proud when I was able to put education last and not above or in front of experience. And the reason why is because I wanted to showcase, what I knew, what I was good at, what I was qualified for, what my experiences were. So after a couple of years, when I was applying for another job, I felt like I had enough to say that I did not need to have education first. So I relocated it behind, below, I'm eating my eggs. I relocated it below my experiences, my job experiences. All right, so for right now, that's what I have. I have all of my experiences, and then I have my education semi-last. We'll discuss that a little later. So, education, what is it that you need? I'm sorry, experiences, right? What do you need? Well, what's your job title, the company name, and then how long were you there? Start off with that. My recommendation, you bold that. So, Painters Incorporated, lead painter, 2010, or you could say May 2010, dash, which means through, right? March 2099, if it's 2099. Perfect. I know that you've been there for a hell of a long time, and that you must be like 90 years old, but it tells me exactly what I need to know. You bold that. Underneath of that, you describe what you've done. You can do it in a sentence format as long as it's succinct. I recommend a bullet format. So don't use 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C. And the reason I recommend against those bullet formattings is because someone may think that 1 is more important than 2, and that may not be the case. You may inadvertently say that your skill set on top was more important than the one on, than the 5th one you mentioned down below. You don't want to even give that indication or make that insinuation. So just use bullet points, those black dots. Don't get crazy. Don't use ridiculous bullet points. No one wants to see butterfly bullet points. You just stick to it, make it nice, simple, black circle dots. Or squares if you like, but don't go any more than that. You need to just keep your resume simple and succinct. So, mention what you did at the job. If you were a lead, mention that. If you had experience with using their systems, mention that. If you're not sure where in the heck to start off with, or you're not sure what you did, you can cheat. Oh yeah, there's always ways to cheat. but this is cheating for being smart. So if you're not sure what to write down, same how you work on your skills and accomplishments. You look at what they're asking for. Remember, they're telling you what they need. So if you have those skill set, put it on your resume. So look at their job description, right? We need someone who understands the difference between latex, polyurethane, clear coating, double clear coat, etc., etc. You know, accomplished with drawing times and understands at a deep level of how to paint wood, steel, and fragmented marble. So go back to your skill set for that job. If you worked on those different applications, mention it, right? Worked on major projects which included, rewrite that, right? Which included painting fragmented marble, steel that was meshed smooth, including aluminum and copper. You know, things like that. Show what you've done. Keep it clear, keep it bullet points. Really take the time now to show that you are really qualified for this job, especially if you've done a lot of the work and you're looking at the resume saying, oh, I'm a shoo-in. You need to show them that. You can't just assume that. So that's one way to do it. That's one way to start saying, okay, where do I start? But there's another way. And this is the real secret to writing an effective resume, okay? People don't want to tell you this. I'm going to just tell you that flat out because it's a huge advantage. I mean, there's just no point on it. If there's any secret sauce, this is definitely that secret special sauce. Here's what you do. And sorry, it's 30 minutes into this. That's how I know if you're listening this far, you're going to be serious. Here's what you do. Let's say you're looking for a new position as, let me think here, as a rice, well, no, it doesn't work so well. Let's say you're making a new position as a computer programmer, okay? Now, you could just look at their job description, say, okay, I've done this, or you could think about what you have done in the past. That's really good. But if you really want the secret, you know what you do? You go online and you look for the similar positions that other companies are asking for. And you print or you scan those, you look at what they have asked for. That's the secret. Because it can be difficult when you're doing that job, especially for a long time, to say, what exactly did I do? And you can look at that job description and say, oh, okay, I know what they're asking for. I can put that I have experience on that. But there's a lot of gaps. You may forget something that maybe they need and didn't mention, or maybe that you did and forgot. So the secret, go back online and say, okay, I want to look for other jobs out there. So you look at other programming jobs, maybe in Kentucky or Cincinnati. It doesn't matter. All you need to do is Google, go to Indeed.com or Monster.com. There's Dice.com. Whatever. Use Google and just put in there, programming jobs, and look at what other companies are asking for their skill set, their accomplishments. And that's when you'll go, oh man, I forgot to add that I knew HTML and CSS. So now you put that, especially if you worked on that heavily, you put that on your resume. You can put that in your work order. Or let's say a lot of times lingo is very important, right? To know if someone really understands what I'm saying and has really the experience, I will use common lingo and sometimes ask them, what does this mean? So you may forget it just because you're so familiar, rather than saying, figured out what needed to be done and rewrote the instructions, in a more technical format, right? The lingo that would probably be more used, especially in that environment, may be develop use case scenarios for interdepartmental requirements. That's lingo that you would expect, right? If you're a chef, I'm not a chef, so I don't really know how to give an example, but rather than saying probably cooked eggs, you may want to say fried eggs with sunny side up and something else. That's the lingo that those individuals or those departments, those disciplines would use. So look at other job descriptions, and that'll help you refresh what you've done. Or maybe they've described what you already wrote down in a bit more professional format. That's what you need. So you look at other examples and you go, okay, yeah, this is perfect. Yeah, I've done this, or wow, I never thought of stating it that way. Use that. Make sure it's true, but use that to build a better resume. I guarantee you, it literally only takes like 10 minutes to find good examples for you to pick out 3 or 4 things and say, yep, that's the better stated than the way I would have stated. Or this is more accurate. Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that, but now I have it. I guarantee you, if you go through that and you make your resume, you are going to get responses. I guarantee it. That's just the way it is. And you're going to get responses for one other reason, because we are not in the industrial age anymore. If you're in the United States, I apologize if you're not. But we're not in the industrial age anymore. And many countries, not just the US, we use technology. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about search engine, okay? Can you be more specific? Sure. I'm talking about search engines where people submit their resumes and automatically using OCR or some other application scan your resume. Believe it or not, corporations get thousands of resumes a week. Yeah, thousands, especially if they're huge. How do they determine, before it even gets to a person, whether they're qualified or not? Hint, keyword search. The same way Google makes its basic engine and then ranks using its algorithm on how relevant something is. So if you're applying for a position as a chef, if you've been a painter all your life and your resume is about painting, they have programs that say, let's look at the resume, let's look at the job description, and we're going to match keywords. Literally, we're going to match keywords. I don't see cooking on here at all. I don't see souffling on here at all. I don't see steak on here at all, or baking. I don't see working with, I don't see the word restaurants on here. It doesn't match what was submitted against what I have. You're going to get like a 2% matching for that job just by keyword search before anyone even sees it. Flip side is, you read what their job description is, you've incorporated their words, their vernacular, or you've gone to other places and you've incorporated and you've rewritten your job description, what you've done, maybe better, or you've added more relevant skill set that maybe you forgot. You add that, and all of a sudden you're applying for that programming job. It's like, oh wow, here we go. They wanted CSS. Okay, you can do CSS, right? Because I see that keyword mentioned in both areas. Your ranking gets higher. Oh, you've had 5 years of programming experience. Well, here I see from June 2025 to June 2035. Yeah, you've got more than 5 years. Computers can do math. They don't need a human to do the math. So they can see that. And by having that keyword matchup from what they've asked to what you have, it will actually bump you higher. So it's kind of a binary system. They're going to look at it and say, okay, there's a 30% matchup. I'm not even going to look at it. Or they look at their computer and they filter, right? If you got a department that gets hundreds in, they're going to filter. They say anyone over 70% plus that match what I'm looking for by the keyword search I want to see. And you could have fantastic experience and not be in that 70% and lose the job before you even got your foot in the door. And they'll never even know your name. Be smart. This is about your job. This is about careers, about making money, supporting yourself, supporting your family. Right? So take the necessary time to get the right job. That's what you need to do. Keyword search. So in your job description, even in your skill set, make sure if they use one word that you're using it. Don't go crazy. You do not want to copy sentences. And do not copy one idea after the other exactly the same way that it was written on that job description. Be smart. You don't want to plagiarize, and you don't want to make it copy the ideas and the words exactly the same. You use your own. But make sure that you're using the same vernaculars. And if you've been in that industry for even more than a year, you'll have some idea of how that works in your specific field. You're going to know that already. So that's how you get your job experience. If you have limited job experience, paid job experience, but let's say you've done a lot of volunteer work, make sure you put that on there. Put your volunteer work on there. Discuss what you've done. It is what it is. You know, you work with what you have. But if you do have limited volunteer, okay, let's say you just really never had a job before. Maybe you're still in high school. At the very top, we talked about after that contact information, you have your qualifications. And underneath that, we talked about skills and accomplishments. Your skills and accomplishments should be damn full. You should have 4 bullet points specifying who you are or what you've done or what you've accomplished, because that's going to complement, right? That's going to help and assist when they look down and see your experience. They can say, oh, okay, it's been volunteer, but look what this individual has learned. Wow, look what she learned. She's been there for 3 years volunteering, and she's familiar with, you know, contract negotiations, working with diverse individuals, conflict resolution. This person's really knowledgeable, and they're going to want to interview her just based on not those keywords for that specific job, but also look at what she's done, regardless of whether it was a paid job or not. So if you have volunteer work, go for it. Add your work history. Make sure, for those of you who have a lot of work history or who've jumped from job to job, only add about 5 to 7 years. If you are a career professional, you know you can ignore this, because you know why. You're going to need to show that work history for a lot of these jobs that are paying quite a bit more or that require a career professional. Career professional, I'm saying well over 10 years in the actual industry of which you're currently still occupied or working in. But if you don't have that, then you might want to consider, you know, if you've been volunteering for 3 years, that's fine. But if you've been volunteering for 3 years at 6 different facilities, my recommendation would be, if it's the same facility but it's at different times, see if you can merge some of those. Because what you want to be careful with employers is to look like you've had 6 different jobs in a 3-year time period. So you might want to, for example, if there was a 2-month break in between for semesters, you can put on there, as long as you're honest and forthcoming, right? You can put on there from 2003 to 2006, for example, volunteered at this. And then in the first bracket, you can, you can say the place name and what your job description is, right, in bold, and then the dates. We talked about that. But in parentheses, you can say summers off, something like that, or 9 out of 12 months we worked. And the idea then is that they understand that there were breaks, but it doesn't look like you've got 6 different jobs. Or you can break that up how you want, as long as you're clear. It can be for an employer who's looking at hiring someone, even if you have great opening sentence for your objective, even if you have great skill set. If you've got, and I've seen this before, this is why I'm mentioning it, if you have a lot of volunteer work, but it's been at, 6 or 7 different locations, it's not a question of maybe what you know. It just can appear to an employer, especially if they're not educated in that field, or maybe they don't understand quite what the volunteer was. It can appear to them that you've been jumping around a lot. Even though it's volunteer work, even though it's great work, even though you guys and gals are out there and you're giving it all and you're doing it all for free, especially if you're there, you're working with people and you're helping them. To an employer, it can be like, this person's jumped around quite a bit. So see if you can merge them together. Add a parentheses, winters and summer semester only, something like that, so it looks less fragmented. And then you can have that job description underneath. And then you can, your job description can be half a page, whatever you feel is necessary for your job. And that was my recommendation. Just so that way you don't have 6 or 7 different jobs and it looks like you're jumping around. After that is education. And of course I mentioned, if you don't have a lot of experience, move education above your work experience. If you have a couple years of work experience, perfect. Education goes to the bottom. What do you need for your education? Simple. School name, location, the year that you started, and the year that you graduated. If you haven't graduated, you put the year that you started, you put a little hyphen, right, the dash, and you put current or expected graduation date, December 2055. Simple as that. That's all that you need. If you have more than one education, hit your enter or return key if you're using a Mac, write out the other education you have. If you have, okay, so that's formal education, right? That's, if you have no college education, but you have high school, I recommend putting your high school down, just so you have something there that shows that you have formal education. If you have, college or associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or PhD, obviously you're going to want to have those. Make sure, it's kind of common sense, but I'll just reiterate, make sure that it's in the order from your most current education all the way down. So I graduated, from this university, in 2055, and then prior to that, I had education in 2025 as an associate's degree. Because that way it shows how relevant have you been keeping up to your education and what's your most current education. So for most of us, that's just one, but if you have more than one, go ahead and put that on there. Just make sure it's from the most recent education to the least recent. So that takes care of your education. Now, so far so good. And for most of the resumes, you're done. However, if you have additional volunteer work, or if you've earned certifications that maybe are not relevant to the job, but you feel like they're character building, my eggs are cold. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm going to apply for a manager role at a bakery. Okay, probably isn't important in the skills and accomplishments or in my objective to mention that I got the Unsung Hero Award from Kansas, which, by the way, I did. Okay, so Kansas State issued Unsung Hero Award, and I was honored to have that. Not really relevant there. I mean, I'm applying for a bakery manager style position, but what you can do to show that you've won an award, or especially those that do a lot more volunteer work and you've worked with people and you've been recognized, or you have your own patents. Where do you put that, right? Where do you feel like, hey, this is part of who I am. I'm proud of it. Let's say you love to jog with your dog. Hey, that you can get a bit more personal. And how do you do that? Where do you put that on a resume that's supposed to be formal and show you how amazing you are at this job and you've got this exact keywords? Where do you put that little bit about who you are as a human, right? Outside of your professional career. You can put that in the very bottom. I think on mine, I think I just put additional skills and a bit about me. Just keep it simple, right? Additional skills, a little bit about me, or something along those lines. Again, they're bullet pointed, and I literally have on there award winner of Kansas Unsung Hero 2000 blah 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 blah. Or I would put holder of 5 U.S. patents, engineering. Volunteered 2013 to 2015 for humanity efforts. Those are the kind, and again, if you don't have all of that, no problem. Bullet point. Love jogging with my dog, Zoe. Perfectly fine. Give a little bit about you that shows that maybe you're an outgoing person, that, do not put Facebook and Instagram crap on there. I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to look, every employer is going to get scared because they're going to think you like to publish information and you could take a picture of something internal and share it with everyone. So you don't want to put anything like that. But you might want to reference if you're part of a local charter, if you're part of a local group like Kiwanis Club or something like that, or Knights, you might want to put that on there, right? That's relevant. IEEE member from this to this. Even if you didn't win a scholarship, but you were considered for a scholarship, right? That's also would be important. For those of us who have some education underneath our belt, you might want to put on there, right? Considered for the 2018 Susan B. Anthony Scholarship. And that shows that you may not have gotten it, but you also were considered because of your grades, because of your efforts that maybe you did something. Those are all really good things to put in bullet points underneath everything else. You keep it to no more than 7, if you have a lot, and you can put them in an order that you think is most relevant. If you're going to be working with a lot of people in customer service, Perfect. That might be your volunteer, right? You might want to show some of the things that you've done that are more aligned with working with people, right? Donating your time, interaction with people. Maybe you went to son's game and every week for 5 months baked goods. Perfect. That really shows not only a good baker, right? Because people are coming back, but that you volunteer, that you got to know people, and that you're sociable, and that you're you're a community-driven type of individual. So you can add those again just at the very bottom. Keep it very simple. Keep it basic. So wrapping it all around, right? What is it that we're doing here, right? Kind of like a quick recap. Well, we're creating a document that shows our professional criteria, what we've done, what was accomplished, what we're good at, and we want to tailor that high level of information to the job or the job market we are applying for the purpose of getting the damn job. And you're going to do that by having good, clear contact information so they can contact you, by having legible, non-fancy, non-crazy fonts and templates. Keep it simple. Standard Word document. That's it. And you're going to write that information, and then you're going to tailor it to the job by A, looking at the job description, and by looking at other examples of similar jobs, so that when you write your resume, you're using the same vernacular, the same lingo as the industry is using. And it'll also help you understand, especially if you have experience, oh, that's right, I did that and I completely forgot about it. So it'll help you create your experiences and what you've done for your work prior. You want to showcase your education if you have some. You want to showcase your skills and accomplishments, as we talked about. No more than 4 bullet points. Showcase what you know. It's an important aspect because it will show your employer, wow, this person knows this and I didn't even ask for it. Whoa. That's good. Showcase if you're a gym nut and you love being in a gym, right? A gym rat, then showcase that. In the gym 15 hours a day and assisted my buddies who gained 30% mass by pounds. Perfect. That's an opportunity to showcase those kind of quick little facts that you've done without necessarily saying where you did it at, because maybe it wasn't at a job. If you have education, as we talked about, go ahead and put that there. We talked about not having days, just months and years. That's all you need for your previous jobs, for your education. It's not important. Just months and years. If you're doing something, month and year when you started, dash when you're expected to graduate. If it's your current job, right, you can say, 2015, you would say May 2015 dash current for your current job. And that lets them know. Make sure that the job, the company name, the month, and the date that you started and ended, if you did, make sure that that first row is highlighted in bold, and then everything underneath of that is not highlighted in bold, because you want to make it clear. That way if someone's skimming through your paperwork, they can readily tell when you started and stopped a job just by looking at the formatting. And speaking of formatting, I'm going to mention again, do not highlight. Do not make one font color different than the other. Do not add a bunch of brackets, a bunch of tables. Don't do any of that. You want to download and use Microsoft template, make sure it's basic as hell. Anything more than that and you take a risk, a huge risk of A, the employer going, this is just ridiculous, and literally may pass it up. B, I should mention, right, if you're submitting this digitally to a company, a lot of times they say upload your resume. Their systems may not even recognize the format if you have a lot of tables and may remove some of that data or may not import it right. So you have a huge risk of doing that. That's why it's not appropriate to have all this extra formatting. So if you have pictures in the background or something, a funny slogan, get rid of all of that. You need to get a job. You're not there to impress someone on how well you know Microsoft Office. So Resume is simple. It's tailored to the job or the job market you're looking for. You have your working experiences. The next thing that you need to do is submit that resume. And what I would ask is this. Every couple of days, as you start submitting that resume, look back at your resume. Say, is my resume clear enough? Look back at the job description. Because you may very well notice, oh, you know what, I didn't add this. Or shoot, I have a misspelling here. You know, I misspelled paint, and it looks like P-I-N-T. It looks like pint. You may, throughout that time, have looked at other resumes or other criteria or other jobs available, and you may say, oh, you know what, I had experience on sharpening, Chicago culinary knives, and I didn't even mention that. Okay, so open up that resume, add that to that experience, your skill set perhaps, and next time you apply for a job, that'll also be on there. You don't want your resume to be a living document where you're always updating it, because that could be worrying some. But when you're applying for a job at first, that's what you have to think about it as. Well, how can I tailor it? How can I make it so that it's accurate to what I've done, and at the same time, my employer can see the same thing? So feel free, as soon as you submit your resume, don't say, okay, I'm done, walk away. Go back to it a day or two later and say, let me look at it again, because you might notice errors, you might notice embarrassing spelling statements, you might notice formatting issues, and all of those will be, of course, transparent. I mean, they'll be very apparent to your employer. So you want to assure that what they're reading is accurate, to the point, and simple for them. And of course, always remember, make sure that you have keywords and that you're applying for something relevant to your industry, because it's very possible that your manager that's looking to hire may not ever even see your resume, no matter how good you are, because their digital systems are saying that there's not enough keyword match, and they may ignore that resume. So I hope that's helped. Please leave your comments below. If you have other suggestions, if you agree or you disagree, it's perfectly fine. There's no right way or wrong way to really do this, as long as you're, within reason. I'll just put that out there. And if you have suggestions, if you have things that you know that work, especially for your specific industry, or maybe I said something that's not right. Maybe if you're an art student, adding, a portfolio or a website link is important. If you have that, tell us how you've done it. Tell us what you've done and what's made you successful. We're all here to help each other out. I've given a lot of my advice, even to people who are competing against the same job that I have. So, this is a world. Share your knowledge. Thank you very much, and have a great one.